Not tonight, not anymore. Victoria said it like she was declining a second cup of coffee. Casual, final, no room for discussion. I stood there in our kitchen, holding 2 glasses of wine I'd optimistically poured, watching my wife of 18 years deliver what amounted to a permanent restraining order on our marriage. The Pinot Grigio suddenly felt heavier in my hands. "Okay," I said, setting both glasses on the granite countertop we'd argued about installing last spring. Message received. Victoria didn't even look up from her phone. Her manicured fingers tapped against the screen with the same rhythm she used when composing emails to difficult clients at her advertising agency. Everything about my wife had become transactional lately, including this conversation. "I'm going to bed," she announced, already walking toward the stairs. "Don't wait up." The irony wasn't lost on me. Don't wait up. As if I'd been doing much waiting lately. I'm Thomas Mercer, by the way. Tom to most people, Tommy to exactly nobody since elementary school. 45 years old, freelance technical writer, former corporate consultant who got tired of explaining why companies were hemorrhaging money on obvious mistakes. These days I work from home, translating engineer speak into English for software manuals and user guides. It's solitary work, which suits me fine. Or used to. Standing alone in our kitchen, listening to Victoria's footsteps disappear into our bedroom, I realized something had shifted. Not just tonight, but over the past year. Maybe longer. The woman who'd once laughed at my terrible jokes and stolen fries from my plate had evolved into someone who scheduled our conversations and rationed her attention like a government commodity. I picked up my wine glass, just mine now, and walked to my home office. The basement room Victoria called Tom's Cave, with that particular tone she reserved for things she tolerated rather than understood. My desk sat surrounded by technical manuals, 3 monitors, and a coffee maker that had seen better decades. This space had become my refuge without me realizing when or why. The computer hummed to life, and I opened a new document. Not for work, for thinking. "Adjustment period begins now," I typed, then deleted it. Too dramatic. Too much like the self-help books Victoria kept buying and never reading. Instead, I opened my calendar application and started making changes. First item, gym membership. I'd been talking about getting back in shape for 3 years. Victoria used to encourage it, back when she cared about my health or appearance. Now she barely noticed when I wore the same shirt 2 days running. Second item, update wardrobe. My closet contained clothes from 2 decades and 3 different body types. Time for an audit. Third item, reconnect with old friends, the ones Victoria found boring or inappropriate for her social circle, the ones I'd gradually stopped seeing to keep peace in our house. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger would come later, along with other emotions I couldn't identify in that moment. What I felt was something closer to relief. Victoria had finally said out loud what her body language had been communicating for months. The guesswork was over. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex, our daughter, currently finishing her senior year at Rutgers. "Dad, can you send money for textbooks? Mom's not answering her phone." I transferred the funds immediately, then typed back, "Done. How are classes going?" "Good. Are you and Mom okay? She seemed weird during our last call." I stared at that message for several minutes. Alex was 21, old enough to handle adult realities, but smart enough to sense when something was wrong. She'd always been perceptive, probably inherited from my side of the family. Victoria's relatives specialized in willful blindness. "We're fine," I lied. "Just busy with work stuff." "Okay, love you, Dad." "Love you too, kiddo." I closed the phone and returned to my planning. Victoria had drawn a line in the sand. Fair enough. But she'd made one critical miscalculation. She assumed I'd keep playing by the old rules while she rewrote them unilaterally. The gym membership took 5 minutes to activate online. 24-hour access, full equipment, group classes optional. I scheduled my first session for 6 a.m. tomorrow. Victoria would still be sleeping off whatever kept her up texting until midnight lately. Online shopping proved equally efficient. 3 pairs of jeans that actually fit my current body instead of the one I'd had in college. Shirts that weren't free promotional items from tech conferences. A leather jacket I'd wanted for years but never bought because Victoria called it midlife crisis gear. Midlife crisis. Maybe she was right. Or maybe this was just life, finally demanding I pay attention to it. By midnight, I'd restructured my entire routine around Victoria's new reality. Separate schedules, separate interests, separate lives sharing the same address. She wanted distance? She'd have it, more than she'd bargained for. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, where Victoria lay with her back to my side of the bed. Her breathing suggested sleep, but the tension in her shoulders indicated awareness. She knew I was there but chose not to acknowledge it. Fine by me. I gathered clothes for tomorrow and headed to the guest room. If intimacy was off the table permanently, I might as well claim some space that didn't come with rejection as a nightly routine. The guest bed felt foreign but not uncomfortable. Different, like everything else would be from now on. Through the wall I heard Victoria's phone buzz with an incoming message, then another, then a third. At 12:30 in the morning, someone was very eager to reach my wife. I should have been curious, should have wondered who needed Victoria's attention at that hour. Instead, I felt nothing but a strange sense of liberation. Her mysterious correspondence were no longer my concern. She'd made that clear. Tomorrow would begin the adjustment period she'd inadvertently initiated. I'd take her seriously when she said, "Not anymore," and I'd adjust everything around that reality. Victoria had no idea what she'd just set in motion, but she would. 6 a.m. came early, but I was already awake. Years of corporate consulting had trained my body to function on minimal sleep and maximum caffeine. The gym was nearly empty at that hour, just a few dedicated souls and one guy who looked like he lived there. "First time?" asked the desk clerk, a college-aged kid with arms like tree trunks. "First time in about 5 years," I admitted, scanning my new membership card. "No judgment here, man. Everyone starts somewhere." The equipment had evolved since my last gym experience. Touch screens on every machine, wireless headphones, apps that tracked everything from heart rate to calories burned. I felt like an archaeologist discovering modern civilization. 30 minutes on the treadmill, 20 minutes with weights I could actually lift, and 10 minutes pretending to know how the stretching area worked. By 7:15, I was back home, showered and making coffee, while Victoria stumbled downstairs in her bathrobe. "You're up early," she observed, not quite a question. "Gym," I replied, holding up my water bottle like evidence. She paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. "Gym?" Figured it was time to get back in shape. Victoria studied my face for signs of ulterior motive. Finding none, she shrugged and returned to her phone. The same phone that had been buzzing with late-night messages. "I'll be working late tonight," she announced without looking up. "Client presentation tomorrow." "Which client?" "The fitness center chain. New campaign launch." Interesting coincidence. "Need any help with research? I could visit some locations, get a user perspective." "That's not necessary." Too quick, too dismissive. "We have focus groups for that." I nodded and returned to my coffee. Victoria finished hers in silence and headed upstairs to prepare for another day of creative directing, leaving me alone with my suspicions and a growing sense that her late nights weren't entirely professional. My first freelance project of the day involved documenting software for inventory management systems. Boring work that paid well and required minimal brainpower. The kind of assignment that left mental energy for other pursuits. Like wondering why my wife of 18 years had suddenly become secretive about her schedule. Victoria left for work at 8:30, kissing my cheek with the mechanical affection of someone fulfilling a contractual obligation. Her perfume lingered after she'd gone. Something new, more expensive than her usual brand. I waited 10 minutes, then opened her laptop. Victoria wasn't particularly security conscious with her personal accounts. Her password had been the same for years: Alex 2003, the year our daughter was born. Sentimental, predictable, and completely accessible to anyone who knew her basic biography. Her email revealed the usual mix of work correspondence, online shopping confirmations, and social media notifications. Nothing suspicious until I checked her calendar. 3 client dinners this week. 2 late brainstorming sessions. 1 weekend team-building exercise I'd never heard mentioned. All recent additions, all scheduled after normal business hours. The fitness center client, Everfit Gyms, appeared frequently in her recent appointments, including tonight's presentation prep that would apparently require her presence until 9 p.m. I closed the laptop and made a decision that would have seemed paranoid a week ago, but now felt like basic due diligence. If Victoria was working late on a fitness center campaign, I could certainly visit one of their locations to better understand their target demographic. The nearest Everfit was 15 minutes from our house, tucked into a shopping plaza between a Starbucks and a nail salon. Modern equipment, motivational posters, and enough mirrors to satisfy the most dedicated narcissist. "Looking for a membership?" asked the woman at the front desk. "Just checking out the facilities. My wife's working on your advertising campaign." "Oh, cool. Which agency?" "Morrison Creative." Her face brightened with recognition. "Victoria's your wife? She's been here a bunch lately, working with Ethan on the new member experience." Ethan, a name Victoria had never mentioned. "That's great," I said, maintaining casual interest. "Is Ethan around today?" "He's with a client right now, but he should be free in about 20 minutes if you want to wait." I wanted to wait very much. Ethan turned out to be exactly what central casting would order for the role of personal trainer turned gym owner. 38, maybe 40, expensive haircut, perfect teeth, handshake that lasted 3 seconds too long, the kind of man who called everyone buddy and meant it as a challenge. "Tom Mercer," I introduced myself. "Victoria's husband." His smile flickered for just a moment. "Ethan Voss. Great to meet you, man. Victoria's told me a lot about you." Funny. She'd never mentioned him at all. "All good things, I hope." "Absolutely. She's really passionate about this campaign, puts in long hours to get everything perfect." "That's Victoria," I agreed, perfectionist to the core. We chatted for another 10 minutes about gym equipment, membership benefits, and the challenges of small business ownership. Ethan was smooth, professional, and completely full of himself. He also kept checking his phone and glancing toward the parking lot like he was expecting someone. "Well, I should let you get back to work," I said finally. "Definitely. Hey, you should come by sometime for a workout. I'd be happy to set you up with a training session." "I might take you up on that." Driving home, I processed what I'd learned. Victoria was spending significant time at a gym owned by a man she'd never mentioned, working on a campaign that required frequent evening meetings and weekend sessions. Either she'd developed an unprecedented dedication to client service, or something else was happening. My phone rang as I pulled into our driveway. "Tom, it's Marty." My older brother, former lawyer turned bar owner, current voice of reason in my increasingly unreasonable world. "What's up?" "Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while." "Been busy. Work stuff." "How's Victoria?" I paused, considering how much to share. Marty had never been Victoria's biggest fan, but he'd kept his opinions to himself for the sake of family peace. "She's fine, working on a big campaign." "Uh-huh." Marty's tone suggested he wasn't buying my casual deflection. "You free for lunch tomorrow? I'm buying." "Sure. Everything okay?" "Just want to catch up with my little brother. Been too long." After hanging up, I realized I'd been isolating myself from family and friends for months, maybe years. Victoria's social preferences had gradually become mine by default, her schedule determining our shared calendar. When had I stopped making independent plans? That evening, Victoria called at 6 to confirm she'd be working late. "Don't wait dinner for me," she said. This presentation is more complex than we thought. No problem. Need me to save you anything? I'll grab something here. Ethan's ordering food for the team. There it was. Ethan's name, finally mentioned in casual conversation, like he'd always been part of her professional vocabulary. Sounds good, I said. See you when you get home. But I wouldn't be home when she returned. I'd be sitting in my car across from Everfit Gyms, watching to see exactly what kind of team-building exercise required my wife's presence until 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night. The parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived at 7:30. Victoria's silver Accord sat near the front entrance, along with a black BMW I assumed belonged to Ethan. Two other cars suggested a very small team indeed. At 8:15, the other cars left. At 8:30, the gym's main lights went dark, leaving only security lighting and the glow from what appeared to be an office window. At 9:45, Victoria emerged from the building. She wasn't alone. Ethan walked her to her car, standing closer than business required, his hand resting on her lower back in a gesture that was definitely not professional. They talked for several minutes before Victoria got into her car. She didn't drive home immediately. Instead, she sat in the driver's seat, checking her phone, fixing her hair in the rearview mirror, and generally behaving like someone who needed to compose herself before returning to her regular life. I drove home first, arriving with enough time to establish my presence in the basement office, before Victoria's key turned in the front door lock. How was the presentation? I called upstairs. Good, productive. I'm exhausted. She was upstairs and in the shower before I could ask any follow-up questions. When she finally came to bed, she smelled like soap and shampoo instead of her usual perfume, like someone who'd needed to wash away evidence of her evening activities. I lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, processing what I'd witnessed. My wife was having an affair. The knowledge sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and undeniable. But instead of rage or heartbreak, I felt something unexpected: clarity. Victoria had declared our physical relationship finished. Now I understood why. She'd simply transferred her attention to someone who appreciated it more than her husband apparently did. Fair enough. But she'd made one crucial error in her planning. She'd assumed I'd remain the same man she'd married, the one who accepted her decisions without question, who adjusted his life around her preferences, who prioritized her happiness over his own dignity. That man was gone. Victoria had eliminated him herself with 4 simple words. Not tonight, not anymore. The man replacing him was someone she didn't know yet, someone who wouldn't be quite so accommodating, someone who was about to become a very serious problem for her carefully compartmentalized life. The transformation began with small changes Victoria didn't notice because she'd stopped paying attention to me months ago. New clothes that actually fit, a haircut that cost more than $20, cologne that didn't come from a drugstore gift set. But the real change was internal. I'd spent 18 years of marriage being reactive, responding to Victoria's moods, accommodating her preferences, adjusting my behavior to maintain domestic harmony. Now, I was becoming proactive. You look different, observed Janet, my neighbor, as I loaded new gym equipment into my car. Good different or bad different? Confident different. It suits you. Janet was divorced, 43, and had been giving me meaningful looks over the fence for the past year. Previously, I'd pretended not to notice. Today, I smiled back. Thanks, I'm making some changes. I can see that. If you ever want company for a workout, I run every morning at 6. I might take you up on that. Victoria was at another late meeting, her 3rd this week, so I had the house to myself for planning. My laptop contained a growing file labeled Research that documented my wife's new schedule patterns, her mysterious correspondence, and the increasing frequency of her client obligations. Ethan Voss had become a regular feature in her calendar. Gym visits, business lunches, weekend strategy sessions, all perfectly explainable if you didn't know what I'd seen in that parking lot. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. Dad, Are you okay? Mom said you've been acting weird lately. Interesting. Victoria was managing the narrative, positioning my changes as problematic rather than addressing her own behavior. I called Alex instead of texting back. Hey kiddo, Mom thinks I'm acting weird? She said you've been distant, going out a lot. She's worried about you. Victoria was worried about me. That was rich. I joined a gym, bought some new clothes, started socializing again. If that's weird, I'll take it. Are you and Mom having problems? The question I'd been dreading. Alex was smart enough to sense the tension, but still young enough to hope her parents could work things out. We're figuring some things out, I said carefully. Nothing for you to worry about. That's what divorced parents always say. We're not divorced, Alex. Yet. After hanging up, I realized Victoria had involved our daughter in whatever story she was constructing about my recent behavior. That crossed a line I hadn't known existed until she'd stepped over it. My brother Marty called an hour later. Lunch tomorrow is canceled, he announced. I'm coming over tonight instead. We need to talk. About what? About whatever's going on with you and Victoria. And don't tell me nothing's wrong. I can hear it in your voice. Marty arrived at 9 p.m. with a six-pack of beer and the expression he used to wear when cross-examining hostile witnesses. My brother had been a successful attorney until he decided he hated law more than he loved money. Now he owned a bar called Reasonable Doubt and dispensed advice to customers who couldn't afford therapy. So, he said, settling into my basement office chair. What's the story? I told him everything. Victoria's declaration, the mysterious late nights, Ethan Voss, the parking lot surveillance. Marty listened without interruption, occasionally nodding like he was taking depositions. You're sure about the affair? He asked finally. Sure enough. What do you want to do about it? I don't know yet. Marty studied my face like he was reading a contract. You're not the same guy you were 6 months ago. Good or bad? Different, harder. More like the brother I remember from before you got married. Before Victoria, I'd been more assertive, more willing to take risks, less concerned with keeping peace at any cost. Marriage had softened those edges, made me more diplomatic, more accommodating, maybe too accommodating. What would you do? I asked. Depends on what you want. You want to save the marriage? Confront her, demand counseling, fight for what you built together? You want out? Document everything, protect your assets, prepare for war? What if I want something else? Like what? Like her to understand what she's throwing away. Marty's expression shifted to something that might have been concern or admiration. That's a dangerous game, Tommy. Revenge has a way of consuming the people who pursue it. I'm not talking about revenge, I'm talking about consequences. Sometimes they're the same thing. After Marty left, I sat in my office thinking about consequences. Victoria had made choices that affected both our lives, but she'd made them unilaterally, without considering how they might impact me or our marriage. She'd assumed I'd remain static while she explored new possibilities. That assumption was about to prove costly. My phone showed a text from Victoria. Working very late tonight, don't wait up. It was already past 11 p.m. Either Everfit gyms had expanded into 24-hour strategy sessions, or Victoria was getting sloppy with her cover stories. I drove to the gym parking lot again, but this time I wasn't just observing, I was documenting. Photos of her car, timestamps, license plate numbers. If Victoria wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules and play them better. Her car wasn't at the gym, neither was Ethan's BMW. I spent 40 minutes driving to other locations, restaurants, hotels, anywhere two people might meet for activities they couldn't conduct at their respective homes. Nothing. Victoria's phone showed her location as Everfit Gyms when I checked the family tracking app we'd installed for Alex's safety. Either she'd left her phone at the gym, or she'd learned to manipulate the GPS settings. I drove home and waited. Victoria returned at 1:30 a.m., parking quietly and entering through the garage. I heard her moving carefully upstairs, trying not to wake someone she assumed was sleeping. The next morning, she appeared in the kitchen looking refreshed and energetic, despite her allegedly exhausting work session. "How was the late meeting?" I asked over coffee. "Productive. We're making real progress on the campaign. Must be a complex project to require so many evening sessions." Victoria's hand paused halfway to her coffee mug. "It's a big account, worth the extra effort." "Absolutely. Success requires dedication." Something in my tone made her look at me more carefully. "Are you feeling okay? You seem different lately." "Different how?" "I don't know. More," she searched for the right word. "More present." Present. As opposed to the absent, accommodating husband she'd grown accustomed to managing. "Maybe I'm just paying more attention to things." "What kind of things?" "Everything. Work, health, relationships, priorities. It's amazing what you notice when you start really looking." Victoria's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She glanced at it, then quickly turned the screen face down. "I should get ready for work," she announced, suddenly eager to end our conversation. After she left, I made a decision that would have seemed unthinkable a month ago. I was going to hire a private investigator, not because I needed proof of Victoria's affair. I already had enough evidence for my own purposes, but because I wanted to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. How long had this been going on? How serious was it? What did Victoria and Ethan think they were building together? Knowledge was power, and I'd been powerless long enough. The investigator came recommended by Marty's attorney contacts, professional, discreet, and expensive enough to be thorough. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she specialized in domestic investigations. "What exactly do you want to know?" she asked during our consultation. "Everything. Timeline, locations, communications, financial transactions. I want to understand what my wife thinks she's doing." "And what will you do with that information?" "I haven't decided yet." Sarah studied my face like she was calculating risk factors. "Mr. Mercer, I've been doing this work for 12 years. I've seen how these situations play out. The clients who want information for closure usually handle it better than the ones who want ammunition. Which category do I fall into? That's what worries me. You don't seem to know." She was right. I didn't know what I wanted beyond understanding the full truth of my situation. But I was beginning to suspect that once I had that truth, I'd know exactly what to do with it. Victoria was about to discover that her accommodating husband had been replaced by someone much less predictable. Someone who paid attention to details, documented inconsistencies, and planned several moves ahead. Someone who took her seriously when she said, "not anymore," and was prepared to show her what that really meant. The game had changed, but Victoria didn't know it yet. Soon, she would. Sarah Chen was worth every dollar I paid her. Within 2 weeks, she'd assembled a comprehensive timeline of Victoria's affair that read like a forensic accounting report. Dates, times, locations, photographic evidence, and financial records that painted a picture of deception far more elaborate than I'd imagined. The affair had been going on for 4 months, beginning shortly after Victoria's agency landed the Everfit account. What started as legitimate business meetings had evolved into something else entirely. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, purchases at stores I'd never heard Victoria mention. She'd created an entirely separate life funded by our joint credit cards. "Your wife is either very careless or very confident," Sarah observed, spreading photographs across her desk. "Most people having affairs try to hide the evidence. She's practically documenting it." The photos showed Victoria and Ethan at restaurants across 3 different towns, holding hands, kissing, behaving like a couple celebrating an anniversary rather than conducting an affair. They looked happy together, comfortable, like people who'd moved beyond the excitement phase into something more serious. How serious do you think this is? I asked. Based on the pattern of behavior? Very. This isn't a fling or a midlife crisis. They're building something together. The financial records were particularly revealing. Victoria had been spending money on clothes, jewelry, and experiences that never appeared in our house or our conversations. She'd created a secret life with secret expenses, funded by accounts I helped fill, but wasn't invited to enjoy. "What's your next step?" Sarah asked. "I'm still deciding." But that wasn't entirely true. I'd been planning for days, considering options that ranged from confrontation to divorce to something more creative. Victoria had spent 4 months constructing an elaborate deception. She deserved a response that matched her level of sophistication. That evening, Victoria announced another late meeting. "Big presentation tomorrow," she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "Ethan wants to run through everything one more time." "Of course he does." Something in my tone made her pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just agreeing that Ethan seems very thorough." Victoria studied my face like she was trying to decode a message. "Tom, are we okay? You've been acting strange lately." "Strange how?" "I don't know. Different. Like you're thinking about something you're not sharing." She was more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. "I'm always thinking about things I don't share. Isn't everyone?" "Not like this. You seem—" She searched for the right word. "Calculating." Calculating. That was probably accurate. I'd spent 18 years being spontaneous and accommodating. Now I was learning the value of planning ahead. "Maybe I'm just growing up," I said. After Victoria left for her meeting, I drove to Marty's bar. Reasonable Doubt was busy for a Thursday night, filled with the usual mix of lawyers, divorced men, and people who needed somewhere to think while drinking. "You look like someone with a story to tell," Marty observed, pouring me a whiskey without being asked. I told him about Sarah's investigation, the photographs, the financial records, and the scope of Victoria's deception. Marty listened without judgment, occasionally nodding like he was processing legal evidence. "So what's the plan?" he asked finally. "I want her to understand what she's losing before she loses it." "How?" "I'm working on that." Marty refilled my glass. "Tommy, I've seen a lot of divorces, the messy ones, the vindictive ones, the ones where people spend more on lawyers than they ever shared in assets. You sure you want to go down that road?" "I'm not talking about divorce." "Then what are you talking about?" I wasn't entirely sure yet, but I was beginning to formulate an idea that would require careful timing and perfect execution. Victoria had spent months showing me how little she valued our marriage. Maybe it was time to show her how much she'd taken for granted. "I want her to choose," I said finally. "Really choose. Not just drift into something else while keeping me as backup insurance. That's dangerous territory, brother." "More dangerous than letting her continue lying to my face every night?" Marty didn't have an answer for that. I drove home to find Victoria already back from her meeting, sitting in our living room with a glass of wine and her laptop. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment, her expression was almost guilty. "How was your evening?" she asked. "Productive. How was the presentation prep?" "Good. We're ready for tomorrow." I sat in the chair across from her, studying her face like I was meeting her for the first time. Victoria was still beautiful at 42, still the woman who'd caught my attention at a conference 18 years ago. But something fundamental had changed in her expression. She looked at me now like I was a problem to be managed rather than a partner to be cherished. "Victoria," I said carefully, "are you happy?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Happy? What do you mean?" "With us, with our marriage, with the life we've built together." She set down her wine glass and closed her laptop. "That's a big question, Tom." "Why are you asking?" "Because I want to know the answer." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her calculating how much truth was safe to share. I think we've grown apart, she said finally. People change. Sometimes they change in different directions. Is that what's happening to us? Maybe. I nodded like I was processing new information instead of confirming what I already knew. What would it take to change that? To grow back together instead of apart? I don't know if that's possible, Tom. Sometimes people reach a point where they want different things. What do you want, Victoria? Another long pause. I want to feel alive again. I want to feel like myself instead of just someone's wife and someone's mother. And you can't feel that way with me? It's not about you, Tom. It's about me. About who I am when I'm not trying to be who everyone else needs me to be. The irony was staggering. Victoria was describing exactly how I'd felt for years, like I'd lost myself in the process of being her husband. But instead of working together to rediscover ourselves within our marriage, she'd chosen to rediscover herself with someone else. I understand, I said, and meant it. Victoria looked relieved, like she'd expected an argument instead of acceptance. I'm glad you understand, Tom. I was worried you'd be upset. I'm not upset, I'm just processing. She smiled, the first genuine smile she'd given me in months. You're a good man, Tom. You deserve someone who can appreciate that. Someone who can appreciate that. Past tense. Like she'd already decided our marriage was over, but hadn't figured out how to announce it yet. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and I realized this was probably the most honest conversation we'd had in years. Victoria thought she was preparing me for the end of our marriage. What she was actually doing was giving me everything I needed to change the rules of the game she thought she was winning. I'm going to bed, she announced, gathering her laptop and wine glass. Good night, Victoria. Good night, Tom. After she went upstairs, I sat alone in our living room, thinking about choices and consequences. Victoria wanted to feel alive again, wanted to rediscover herself outside the constraints of marriage and family. I could understand that desire. What I couldn't understand was her assumption that I'd remain frozen in place while she explored her options. But I was beginning to understand something else. Victoria didn't just want out of our marriage. She wanted out with minimal consequences, maximum sympathy, and the moral high ground intact. She wanted to be the woman who'd outgrown her marriage rather than the woman who'd betrayed it. That narrative was about to become much more complicated, because the accommodating husband she'd taken for granted was about to remind her that every choice has consequences, and some consequences are more expensive than others. The game was about to change in ways Victoria couldn't imagine, and I was going to enjoy watching her figure out the new rules. The opportunity came from an unexpected source, Victoria herself. Tom, I need a favor, she announced over breakfast, her tone carrying the casual authority of someone accustomed to having requests granted without question. What kind of favor? The agency is having a client appreciation event next Friday. Awards dinner, networking, the whole thing. I need you to come with me. I paused with my coffee cup halfway to my lips. You want me to attend a work function? I know it's not your favorite thing, but it's important for my career. The Everfit people will be there, and I want to make a good impression. The Everfit people, including Ethan Voss, presumably. Victoria wanted me to attend a social event where I'd meet her lover face-to-face, shake his hand, make small talk about business while he mentally undressed my wife. Of course, I said. I'd be happy to support your career. Victoria looked surprised by my immediate agreement. Really? You're not going to complain about boring work events and people you don't know? Why would I complain? You said it was important. She studied my face like she was looking for signs of sarcasm or hidden agenda. Finding neither, she smiled with what appeared to be genuine gratitude. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate this. What should I know about the Everfit people, so I can make intelligent conversation? Oh, you'll like Ethan. He's the owner, very charismatic, great business sense, really passionate about fitness and helping people transform their lives. Transform their lives. That was one way to describe what Ethan was doing to our marriage. Sounds like an interesting guy. He is. Very focused, very driven, the kind of person who goes after what he wants. I bet he was. The week leading up to the event gave me time to prepare. Not just the usual preparation, new suit, good haircut, polished shoes, but strategic preparation. I was going to meet Ethan Voss on Victoria's professional turf in front of her colleagues, with her reputation and his business interests both at stake. The venue was a hotel ballroom in downtown Princeton, filled with advertising executives, clients, and the kind of people who used words like synergy without irony. Victoria looked stunning in a black dress I'd never seen before, probably purchased for occasions that didn't include her husband. "There's Ethan," she said, nodding toward a group near the bar. "Come meet him." Ethan looked exactly like his surveillance photos, but somehow smaller in person. Still handsome, still confident, but with the particular brand of charm that worked better on insecure people than on those who'd learned to recognize manipulation. "Ethan, I'd like you to meet my husband, Tom." His handshake was firm, his smile practiced, his eye contact just a fraction too intense. "Tom, great to finally meet you. Victoria talks about you all the time." "All good things, I hope." "Absolutely. She's very proud of your writing career." Writing career. Victoria had been discussing my work with her lover, probably painting me as the harmless intellectual who posed no threat to their arrangement. "Thank you, and congratulations on your business success. Victoria tells me Everfit is expanding rapidly." "We are. It's an exciting time. Victoria's been instrumental in developing our brand strategy." "She's very talented," I agreed. "I'm lucky to have her." Something flickered in Ethan's expression. Surprise, maybe, or discomfort. He'd probably expected the jealous husband or the oblivious fool. Instead, he was meeting someone who seemed genuinely supportive of his wife's professional relationship with her lover. "Well," Ethan said, "I should let you two enjoy the evening. Tom, great meeting you. Likewise. I hope we'll see more of each other." After he walked away, Victoria looked at me with something approaching amazement. "That was perfect," she said. "Thank you for being so gracious." "Why wouldn't I be gracious? He seems like a nice guy." "He is. I'm glad you like him." The evening proceeded with the usual mix of speeches, awards, and networking conversations. I played the role of supportive husband perfectly, making appropriate small talk, laughing at mediocre jokes, and generally behaving like someone who belonged in Victoria's professional world. But I was also watching, observing the subtle interactions between Victoria and Ethan, the way they managed to find each other in conversations, the careful distance they maintained in public. They were good at hiding their relationship, but not perfect. Anyone who knew what to look for could see the signs. During the awards presentation, I excused myself to use the restroom and made a brief detour to the hotel bar. The bartender was young, chatty, and eager to make conversation with someone who tipped well. "Busy night," I observed. "Yeah, the advertising people always throw good parties. You with that group?" "My wife is. I'm just along for the ride." "Cool. You want another drink?" "Actually, I'm curious about something. That guy over there, the one in the gray suit talking to the blonde woman. Do you know if he's a regular here?" The bartender glanced toward Ethan and Victoria, who were indeed talking near the hotel's restaurant entrance. "Oh yeah, that's Mr. Voss. He's here pretty regularly, usually with different women, though. Business dinners, I think." "Different women?" "Yeah, always professional looking. Probably clients or something. He tips well, so we don't ask questions." I tipped the bartender $20 and returned to the ballroom with a new piece of information. Ethan brought women to this hotel regularly. Either he was an exceptionally dedicated businessman, or Victoria wasn't his only extracurricular activity. The drive home was quiet until Victoria broke the silence. "Thank you for tonight, Tom. I know these events aren't your thing, but you were wonderful. I enjoyed meeting your colleagues, especially Ethan. Interesting guy. He liked you too. He said you seemed very grounded." Grounded. Code for non-threatening. That's nice of him to say. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised me. "Tom, I've been thinking about what we talked about last week, about being happy, about growing apart." "What about it?" "I think maybe we should consider counseling, or at least talking more about what we both want." I glanced at her, trying to read her expression in the dim light of the car. What brought this on? Tonight, I guess. Seeing you with my work friends, remembering why I fell in love with you in the first place. You're a good man, Tom. Maybe we've just forgotten how to be good together. The irony was almost overwhelming. Victoria was having an emotional moment about our marriage, while still conducting an affair with the man we'd just spent the evening socializing with. Either she was a masterful manipulator, or she was genuinely confused about what she wanted. "I'd be open to counseling," I said carefully, "if you think it would help." "I do. I think we owe it to ourselves to try." When we got home, Victoria did something she hadn't done in months. She kissed me goodnight. Not the perfunctory peck on the cheek that had become our routine, but an actual kiss that suggested she remembered being married to me. "Good night, Tom." "Good night, Victoria." I lay in the guest room bed processing the evening's revelations. Victoria was either planning to end her affair and recommit to our marriage, or she was hedging her bets in case things didn't work out with Ethan. Given what the bartender had told me about Ethan's regular visits with different women, she might be wise to keep her options open. But Victoria had made one crucial miscalculation. She assumed I was still the same accommodating husband who would gratefully accept whatever level of attention she was willing to provide. She didn't realize that her months of deception had fundamentally changed how I viewed our marriage and my place in it. I was no longer interested in being her backup plan. The next morning brought a phone call that would accelerate everything. "Tom, it's Sarah Chen. We need to talk." "What did you find?" "Something that changes the entire situation." "Can you meet me today?" An hour later, I sat in Sarah's office looking at photographs that made the previous evidence seem insignificant. Ethan Voss with 3 different women over the past month. Hotel visits, restaurant dates, intimate moments captured from discreet distances. "Your wife isn't his only affair," Sarah explained. "He's seeing at least 2 other women that I've documented. All married, all clients of businesses he works with. He's running a pattern." "Exactly. Ethan Voss is a serial affair partner. He targets married women in professional relationships, probably enjoys the complexity and the ego boost." I studied the photographs, recognizing the hotel where Victoria and I had attended the awards dinner. Ethan had been using the same location for multiple affairs, probably had a regular arrangement with the staff. "Does Victoria know about the others?" "Based on my observations, no. She seems to think their relationship is exclusive." Victoria was in love with a man who was simultaneously deceiving 2 other women exactly the way he was deceiving her. She'd thrown away 18 years of marriage for someone who viewed her as one option among several. "What do you want to do with this information?" Sarah asked. I looked at the photographs spread across her desk, evidence of betrayal, deception, and the kind of casual cruelty that destroys families for entertainment. "I want to show Victoria exactly what she's chosen," I said finally. "And then? Then I want to watch her decide if it was worth it." The game was about to change again, but this time, Victoria wouldn't be the only one surprised by the new rules. Ethan Voss was about to learn that some husbands don't stay accommodating forever, and some consequences are more expensive than others.